Let's spend a moment on the key aspect of regulation of AI. India has just about passed a data privacy law. I'm curious on your thoughts around that, which doesn't specifically deal with AI. These are issues of data privacy from a few years ago, and obviously the law takes time to go through consultative committees, get drafted, get ready, and we already have a completely different revolution upon us where, again, the legal system and the regulatory framework isn't ready. In a global context, and more specifically in an Indian context, how do you think artificial intelligence should really be regulated?
Well, I think it's interesting to think about the data privacy law, which is now nearly complete, what India, I think, has done with it and how that connects with where AI and potentially AI regulation is going. First, I think the government of India did the right thing by pausing a year ago, taking time to really think it through. I personally think that what emerged is the right thing for India. Actually, I think it's an interesting model for the world because it protects fundamental privacy needs, the rights of people to have consent, to consent to the use of their data. I think it actually improves upon concepts that in many respects have been used around the world, this notion of having a data fiduciary and a fiduciary duty if you are getting data from someone to deliver a service to them. But it also does it in a way that enables data to move. And I think especially for an economy like India, where people move across borders, goods move across borders, services created here, including software code, move across borders. None of that can happen without data being able to move as well. So you take that pragmatic approach to what I'll call an ability to uphold fundamental principles. I sense just from the conversations I'm having here that that fundamental philosophy is something that is taking root here for AI as well. I think that's a good thing. Now we'll have to segue to the new issues, the new principles. We published this past week what we call a blueprint for governing AI and what it means for India. And I do think the public is looking for us, perhaps first and foremost, to ensure safety, to ensure that AI remains under human control, to have, as we call it, safety breaks if it's going to be used to manage or control critical infrastructure, to address a variety of other issues that are important. But I think a real focus on innovation balanced with these regulatory needs is going to be of fundamental importance to the Indian economy.
I was having a fascinating conversation over lunch with Professor Soumitra Datta, who's here for the B20 summit, which is taking place in the capital. And he did his PhD in AI 30 years ago and is now Dean of the SET School of Business at Oxford University. And he said that big tech companies are trying to underplay the impact that AI will have on job losses because they're worried that if they actually explain to the world the full capabilities of AI, governments and regulators will come down harder at them. So they're trying to make it seem as if, yes, it's exciting, it's innovative, but it's no real big deal, and they're not fully explaining the actual impact this could have on the lives of people here and across the world.
I do think it's a big deal. That's the first thing I would say. I think that artificial intelligence is going to probably be the most important technological advance of our lifetime. And I think for human creativity, for critical thinking, for learning, for the dissemination of all kinds of information, it's probably the most important advance since the invention of the printing press. And that was really perfected in 1462. So that's a long time ago. So I don't think we should understate its importance. Now, what does that mean for jobs? Well, there will be new jobs that are created. There are jobs that exist today that didn't exist a year ago. You may run into somebody who introduces themselves and they may say, hello, I'm a prompt engineer. What's a prompt engineer? It's basically somebody who's working with AI models and then using it to craft the commands, the questions, the queries to generate the output that someone is looking for. There will be jobs that will change. There will be some areas like I would be willing to project like jobs in call centers, where already you've seen those move from, say, India to the Philippines, in part based on cost. But computers will replace some of the needs to talk to people. Even more than that, I think AI will change the job. And I think in many ways we're hopeful that it will change jobs, we hope for the better. It will take tedium out of some jobs. It will enable somebody in a call center to focus more on the person they're speaking to, because they will have one screen that may be able to provide them the answer that they're looking for, tuned on their own proprietary data set. And we're all going to have to learn how to use this. To me, it is more like the 1990s when PCs first started to enter workplaces. As a company, we at Microsoft really had to lean in to teach people how to use a computer, teach people how to use a word processing program, email. We, as a company, are very focused on what it will take to advance AI skilling here in India and around the world. So I wouldn't understate any of the changes. I will say I'm probably more optimistic than pessimistic, however, about what I think it can do for people.
But let's spend a moment on the aspect of skilling, because while prompt engineers, computer scientists, AI experts obviously have a glorious future ahead of them because they have just the right skills, the fact is that most people in this country and elsewhere don't. And the quality of educational institutes aren't such that they put you at the cutting edge of technical capabilities. And therefore, how are you at Microsoft trying to address the challenge of skilling?
Well, we're launching skilling programs, and I personally think we're just going to be moving forward with almost a renaissance of skilling. And I think for anybody who works in a business, in a company, you're going to find that you're going to need to invest more in the skilling of your people. If you actually look at the last 40 years globally and employer investments in employee training, we went through about a 20 to 25 year period where there was a steady increase in investments in training. It started in the 1980s, and it really coincided with the push when PCs came into the workplace. And then we got to the early 2000s, and the investments fell, and it's stagnated ever since, because basically, by and large, we could assume that people would show up either knowing how to use most of this technology, or in many instances able to figure it out for themselves by watching a YouTube video or something. And I think this is a new set of skills. It's fascinating to me because there's a reason that at Microsoft we call our services co-pilots. It's designed to help you think. It will not replace the need for you to think. And the biggest mistake people could make is that they think it will. And what you tend to find when you start using this technology is you start to figure out how to get smarter to get the most out of it. You get information back, you ask more questions, and we'll need programs. We're creating programs already to spread that. Of course.
On the issue of thinking and analytical skills, because one of the big concerns in schools and colleges and universities is that if everything is available on a prompt, you are taking away the ability to join the dots, analyze, because you could ask a complex question and voila, the answer comes out of a prompt. And therefore, why do you feel it doesn't take away in your formative years from a student the ability to process and analyze?
Because I think that it's an enormous mistake if people think that all they need to do is read and digest and not ask the next question. What is it that fundamentally makes people more successful in life? Actually, if there's one thing that I have found as somebody who's had the good fortune to meet with leaders around the world, the leaders that have been the most successful, regardless of the field we're talking about, have almost always impressed me with one trait above all else: enormous curiosity. And what these people have in common is not that they have assimilated more answers than anybody else, but they ask more questions. And the best way to ask more questions is to get each question you asked answered faster, think about it, and then ask the next question.